Trevor Penning might be the biggest winner of the New Orleans Saints offseason. We got all that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend, Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as a Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, I want to introduce you to three underdogs that you should be watching throughout the offseason and getting into training camp. We'll also take a look at players whose jobs got a little bit tougher over the course of this offseason. And we're going to lead everything off with the people that I would consider the winners of the offseason programs, OTAs, mandatory minicamp, and it all starts off with offensive lineman Trevor Penning. We appreciate you very much, as always, whether it's your first time or your next time being here with us this time, making us your first listen, and being it every day or here on the show, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. And a big shout out to everybody that's catching us for the first time on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. Very grateful, very glad, very excited to be here with you and for you to be here with us. I want to introduce you to three winners of the New Orleans Saints offseason programs. When I talk about offseason programs, it's about OTAs and I'm talking about mandatory minicamp. So I'm not really going all the way back to rookie minicamp. And I'm going to leave the quarterback side of this conversation as well, because the quarterbacks, no one's won yet, right? Those guys are battling it out. But I want to start off with the person that I think might be the biggest winner of this offseason, and that is offensive lineman Trevor Penning. The two big reasons why I think that he is the biggest winner this offseason is because the Saints did every single step that might make a player look like he's on his way out, but yet gave him another opportunity. The second reason is that he gets that other opportunity at a new position that he looks to be impressing at. Of course, we know that Trevor Penning has moved from left tackle, played right tackle last year. Now he's moving from right tackle to left guard. But if you think about all the things that the New Orleans Saints did this offseason, they drafted Kelvin Banks Jr. this past year, or this past draft, at number 9 overall. Played the same position that Trevor Penning was drafted to play. Last year, Taliesin Fuanga, top 15 selection, same thing. Ended up playing the position that Trevor Penning was drafted to play. The Saints went to the free agent market. They signed Dillon Radunz. They brought back Will Clapp Jr. Both guys have the guard versatility. Dillon Radunz has the guard tackle versatility. Despite all of that, however, Trevor Penning is still an absolute shoo-in to be amongst this team's starting 5 offensive linemen because of his move to left guard. That is a major win for me. If you're somebody that is playing a particular position and your team comes back 2 years later and drafts that exact same position, and then comes back the very next year and drafts that exact same position again, typically speaking, especially as you're going into a contract year, remember this is Trevor Penning's final year on his deal, 4th year. They did not pick up his 5th year option. Typically speaking, all of that would be signs that you might be on your way out. Trevor Penning, however, still incredibly talented, still incredibly physical, still very athletic. And what are they doing? They're finding a way to still keep him not just on the roster and not just in the rotation, but potentially, assuming that he continues to pan out, which he has so far from all accounts at left guard this season, he might still be in the starting lineup for the New Orleans Saints. That's a really cool situation for Trevor Penning, who could potentially now get a second contract at a contract that would be a little bit more affordable for New Orleans, playing on the interior than the outside, and that might give him a little bit of an advantage in terms of seeing a second contract for himself. So for me, Trevor Penning, despite the investments at his drafted position, despite the investments in free agency as well at other positions, still getting a chance here to be in the starting lineup and looking like a shoo-in to get there. Awesome, humongous win for Trevor Penning, who a lot of people inside the facility are impressed with with the way that he has managed moving from one side to the other side, then moving from the outside to the inside and all that other stuff. Like everybody's talking about his attitude. Everybody's talking about how much his aggressive play style fits what it is that he's doing, all these other things. Just a great situation for the young man. So awesome stuff there. Definitely a winner for me when it comes to offseason programs, because it could have gone an entirely different direction, and it did not for him. And a lot of that has to do with him, let me tell you. Number 2 on my list, defensive end. Let's call him the new position or effectively the new position designation that we're expecting to see because of the addition of defensive coordinator Brandon Staley, edge rusher Chase Young. Chase Young gets a 3-year, $51 million deal that's worth up to $57 million. Then the Saints just kind of leave his position alone. They didn't do a lot there. And I think that's a big win for Chase Young, because it effectively tells Chase Young, hey, you're the leader in the clubhouse at this position now. All of that investment went to Chase Young. The Saints then turned around and they drafted in the 7th round Fadil Diggs out of Syracuse, formerly of Texas A&M, a player that I think is going to be a solid pro in the NFL if he's allowed to develop and gets the development opportunities that he deserves. But him as a stand-up pass rusher, excellent role for him, or just as a pass rusher, really, excellent role for him, but 7th round pick. They brought in an undrafted free agent, Jasheen Davis. Then they went out and they signed Chris Rumph, coming in off of that relationship that he had previously with Brandon Staley over in Los Angeles. Very talented player during his time in college. Hasn't had a lot of opportunities out on the field, so maybe he ends up being able to make the roster, get those opportunities, but no threat to Chase Young in terms of what's happening at the top of the position group. Chase Young, Carl Granderson, Cam Jordan. Those guys are seen as the top of the position group. And Chase Young, I think, with the investment that came from the team and then seeing the way they address the position outside of that, tells you everything you need to know in terms of what the Saints believe Chase Young can be. Remember, over 70 pressures last year, just 5.5 sacks. They'd like to see that sack number go up. Cam Jordan has already spoken and said that he believes that sack number will go up with Brandon Staley's defense. And so lots of opportunities for him. And then you add on top of that the scheme change, which is a great fit for a slimmed down Chase Young that's playing in the 260 range, now gets to use that athleticism, that speed, all the things that made him a number 2 overall selection just a few years ago. Remember, he hasn't been in the league that long. Real opportunity for him here in New Orleans. Absolute winner in the offseason for me. And then finally, just because the way that I like to highlight this is that you might think that this guy is in a position battle with the fervor that he brings to the field, the way that he plays, the way that he performs. But he's actually got a clean shot to the number 1 position in his position group. You just wouldn't be able to tell it watching him play, because he goes out there and practices like he is fighting for his NFL life. And that is cornerback Kool-Aid McKinstry, who has been an absolute star over the course of the offseason programs. His attitude, the way he carries himself on the field, his composure, his poise, his leadership, all of those things, the way that he's been able to produce over the course of these practices as well. He closed out with a really strong second day of mandatory minicamp. Remember, the Saints canceled their last day of mandatory minicamp, but he showed out with a really, really strong day there. But that wasn't the only day where he was impressive. He was outstanding throughout the first day of minicamp, all the days of OTAs that media was able to see. We were there for 3 of the 9 practices, and number 4 now completely stood out every single time. So Kool-Aid McKinstry, for me, another big winner of the offseason, solidifies himself in that number 1 role as a top cornerback in the building, but he's got a great veteran corner opposite him and Isaac Yiadom. And because of the strength of that tandem, Isaac Yiadom, remember, in 2023, led the NFL amongst all cornerbacks that took at least 300 coverage snaps in 2023. Isaac Yiadom's 30% forced incompletion percentage was number 1 in the NFL. Now you have that solid tandem on the outside, allowing Alontae Taylor to stay on the inside. Another winner, really, of the offseason as well. You got other winners. Make sure you send them over to me. But coming up next, I want to turn the page to the players whose jobs got a little bit harder. Let's get to that next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. There is nothing like the excitement of live sports, and Game Time is the place to go to get yourself some affordable tickets to your favorite sporting events. But remember, they're not just limited to sports. They've also got concerts. They've got theater. You can get Chicago tickets over at the Sanger before they close up. But of course, you can check out all these New Orleans Saints tickets, preseason on the way, regular season games as well. You can find tickets to your favorite NFL events for $100 or less in some cases. So make sure you go and check them out today. Everything you need over at Game Time. Don't forget to toggle on all-in pricing as well so that there's no fees that take you by surprise like those other ticketing apps when you get to checkout. So go and check them out today. You can download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. You get $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use that promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, family. The New Orleans Saints did have some winners from the offseason programs, but there are also a couple of players whose jobs got a little bit tougher over the course of this offseason. I'm going to give you two players in particular that happened to, maybe a bonus third if we've got time. Otherwise, we'll come back at a later point in the week and go through that. But, and look, I should say real quick, like the two players that I'm going to talk about here are running back Kendre Miller as well as safety Jordan Howden. And a lot of it comes down to the amount of competition they now have at their position. So their job was made harder because of the additions that were brought in. And so they have a little bit of a hill to climb when it comes to what it is that they're going to be looking for as a role in 2025. But I want to be clear. It doesn't mean that they won't be able to do it. In fact, it doesn't mean that their job is even, too challenging for them. In fact, I would never say that about any player at this point. That's kind of what the offseason is all about. But the competition does make the road a little bit more, let's say, circuitous. You got to meander a little bit, right? You're going to you got some more obstacles in the road. You got to kind of work your way around, things like that. So I want to start off with running back Kendre Miller. And the reason why is because Kendre Miller has a real big opportunity here in 2025. Behind Alvin Kamara, the running back 2 spot, is effectively out in the open, right? Anybody can grab it. Kendre Miller, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the veteran who signed with the team late last season. You got a rookie running back that this present coaching staff went out and drafted out of Kansas, and Devin Neal in the 6th round of the 2025 NFL draft, and a whole bunch of other guys that are also battling for opportunities. Velus Jones Jr. added this offseason. Xavier Valade joined the team late last year. Marcus Yarns, undrafted free agent, joined the building or joined the room this offseason. And now the Saints last week went outside and actually signed Cam Akers as well, a player that had been trying out with them over the course of mandatory minicamp and clearly did enough for the Saints to go ahead and give him a 1-year deal, bring him back, and then give him the opportunity to come in and potentially fight for a roster spot. And that's another veteran in the room too. We're not just talking about somebody coming in and maybe being, an undrafted free agent, maybe fighting for a role or something like that. That's a veteran that the Saints went out and signed with some good experience. And beyond all of those players, you also have sort of this other lingering opportunity and lingering question mark in the run game when it comes to tight end Taysom Hill. No one knows exactly when he's going to be ready just yet. And he's somebody that has contributed very effectively to the run game over the course of the past few years. And so there's absolutely going to be an opportunity to contribute to the run game while the Saints figure out how long it's going to take to get Taysom Hill back out on the field. So the Saints have, especially with Kellen Moore, new head coach in the building, a real role and real opportunity for these running backs to contribute however many make the roster. Now, it is interesting. The Saints have carried either 3, sometimes 4 running backs over the course of the past few years. This is a new coaching staff, but hear me out. Over the course of the past few years, but also carried a fullback, Adam Prentice, for instance, over the course of the past couple of seasons. There's no fullback on this roster right now. I don't know if Kellen Moore plans to even utilize a fullback. I mean, they brought none in for tryouts. They didn't have any even for rookie minicamp, all that other stuff. Maybe that's a role that they look at for Taysom Hill. But again, he might not be available early on in the season. So where do you find that? Maybe you don't even utilize that. That's where maybe a guy like Jack Stoll comes in, or some of these tight ends that end up being kind of, these backers that can, or these tight ends that can play in the backfield and all these other things. And so we'll see exactly which way they go to maybe fill that lead blocker role. But with no fullback on the roster, that is an extra roster spot. So there could be, behind Alvin Kamara, 3 of these players that end up getting a job as a New Orleans Saints running back by the time that the season begins. So Kendre Miller does have a pretty comfortable opportunity. as the guy that everybody wants to see. Can he do it with more inside runs? Can he do it? Can he stay healthy? All these other kind of bigger question marks that he's got to answer. But there's no doubting the talent when it comes to a Kendre Miller, right? I mean, of the players that carried the ball at least 20 or 30 times over the course of the last 2 seasons, Kendre Miller for the New Orleans Saints is the only running back to top 3 yards after contact in each of those 2 seasons. He's led the team in both of those seasons. He had 13 broken tackles or missed tackles forced, according to Pro Football Focus last season, despite only carrying the ball 39 times. That's a third of his carries in terms of how many missed tackles he had. Now, not every missed tackle happened on an individual carry, but you get the idea. And so Kendre Miller does not have, a big time barrier in front of him that's going to keep him from making the roster, but his job just got a little bit harder is all, right? Investments at the running back position with Cam Akers and, Cam Akers most recently bringing back Clyde Edwards-Helaire earlier this offseason, drafting Devin Neal, bringing in Marcus Jones as a UDFA. There is just a lot of competition in that running back room. So it's just to say that Kendre Miller now has that competition, and the competition has gotten even more steep just this past week. So we'll see what he's able to do to kind of circumvent some of that here over the course of training camp when that rolls along beginning late next month. Safety Jordan Howden's another one that has seen his room get heavily populated. Justin Reed signed this offseason, the draft selection of Jonas Sanker. They bring in Elliott Davison as well as an undrafted free agent. So a lot of work around the safety position for this team. And so Jordan Howden, who is a player that, Marcus Robertson, for instance, who coached in the past couple of years, saw him as a post safety meaning a middle of the field, deep coverage safety, but he played a lot in the box. They were trying to get him to develop there a little bit. Now we'll see what his role looks like. But the thing that's really good is that he is an excellent zone safety, good looking, watching the quarterback, getting his eyes into the backfield, even while he's deep and covering deep and just following the eyes and being able to make breaks on plays because he's following the eyes of the quarterback. This Brandon Staley defense should give the secondary a little bit more of those opportunities. So that will probably benefit Jordan Howden and his play style, depending upon which role he's given at safety. And we've seen him move around, do a little bit of everything. So offseason programs wise, there's only so much that we've gotten the opportunity to see. We'll see exactly how he's utilized a little bit more firmly when we get into training camp, preseason, regular season, all that good stuff. But Jordan Howden, seeing that safety room become a little bit more populated, seeing that safety room add another veteran in Justin Reed, and then now the curiosity of what his role is going to look like in a new defense and a changing defensive scheme. It's a little bit of a tougher road for him, but again, not something that he can't navigate. The bonus that I wanted to give you was really down to special teams. Blake Grupe's job got a little bit harder with Charlie Smith continuing to stick around, but that's kind of the same thing that he went up against last year. But Matthew Hayball, who looked excellent punting during minicamp when we were outside, finally got the opportunity to see him. James Burnip, though, the undrafted free agent out of Alabama, 6'6", 230 plus pounds, looked like he could be a tight end in the league, but he's out there punting. He's got a big leg as well. And so the combination of those guys having a little bit, having competition again, right? Charlie Smith, another year of experience, all that, plus the changing rules around special teams and everything, their jobs got a little bit harder as well. So there you go. We got you a little bit of lanyap in this category, just like I wanted to. Coming up next, though, I want to take a look at 3 underdogs that you need to know, leading off with an impressive young cornerback that's making waves in the locker room just as much as he is on the field. We got that coming up for you next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let's get it. Who Dat Nation got 3 underdogs that you should be following here as we get closer and closer and closer to training camp. And of course, as training camp kicks off, we're going to start over on the defensive side, a player that has made waves in the locker room already and has made some plays on the field as well. Young cornerback, former Middle Tennessee State safety, Trey Fluellen. Trey Fluellen is somebody that joined this team late last season in December. Why? Because late in his 2023 season, before finishing up at Middle Tennessee State, he suffered an ACL injury and then documented very closely, by the way, you can see it on his social media pages and stuff like that, documented very, very in-depth his recovery from that, getting back out on the field, all that other stuff. Didn't get drafted to 2024 NFL draft, didn't immediately land anywhere as an undrafted free agent either, did get drafted, believe it was by the Houston Roughnecks, if I remember correctly, in the UFL, but then signed with the Saints as an undrafted, or as, well, he was an undrafted free agent, but signed with the Saints late. It was in December of last year. So almost a full year from his initial ACL surgery / injury. And he's somebody at 6'2", 210 pounds. That's an impressive size for a cornerback. He's a former safety. He's got really, really good ball tracking ability down the field, and he's an extremely willing tackler. During his 3 seasons at Middle Tennessee, had 197 tackles, 8 of which were for a loss, but he also added 5 interceptions as well as 14 pass breakups. So he was somebody that got in, made a lot of passes defended, So somebody that got in, made a lot of plays, made some plays at the catch point, took the ball away, and probably more importantly for an NFL trajectory, was a willing and able tackler. 197 tackles over the course of 3 seasons for a safety. That's pretty solid. That's a guy that came down, got down in the box, did some of the dirty work, cleaned up in the run game, was able to make some plays on the outside when it came to screens and things like that. So he's somebody that has been really impressive. He, like Kendre Miller, like Jordan Howden, in a very crowded room. Obviously, there are the guys at the top of that position group, Kool-Aid McKinstry, Isaac Yiadom. You look at Alontae Taylor. I would throw Rico Payton in there. You want to talk about an underrated player? We're going to go to some under-the-radar guys later on this week. Rico Payton, absolutely up there. And so that plus, they drafted Quincy Riley out of Louisville. They have more corners that have come in. Plus, you have guys like Ugo Amadi that can play in the slot and play out a little bit of everything. So you look at a guy like Trey Fluellen, he does not have the easiest path to the roster, but could potentially land back on the practice squad. He was on the practice squad last year, was brought back on a reserve future deal, and then has already impressed, had a beautiful diving pass breakup in the 3rd day, I believe it was, of open mandatory minicamp. That was the 9th day. He ends up making this big diving pass breakup, gets up, throws the thumbs down, Alontae Taylor's celebration. Alontae Taylor celebrating with him as well. It was awesome. Those 2 guys actually kind of know each other. Alontae Taylor played high school football at Manchester, Tennessee. Shout out Bonnaroo. And that's about 33 miles, just over 30 miles south of Murfreesboro, Tennessee, where Middle Tennessee State is. So a little geography lesson for you on today's episode of Locked on Saints. But Trey Fluellen, definitely a name to get to know. And I mentioned that he makes waves in the locker room. Just an enthusiastic guy that lives with a lot of joy, loves the game of football, and loves being out on the football field. Really, really impressive young man, just in terms of being able to be a guy that's a bit of a culture guy, that's a glue guy, that is just excited to be around and is always looking for the next opportunity. Where can I impact? How can I contribute? Where can I find work? That's kind of the guy that he is, and it's awesome to see. He also crashed Cam Jordan's interview in the 2nd day of mandatory minicamp. Actually came in and asked him a few questions before we got started with him. It was really cool. So just a great personality, really good dude, and is finding opportunities to flash on the field as well. Number 2 on the list today, I want to highlight Danny Stutzman. I do think Danny Stutzman's a little bit of an underdog. You could be a fan favorite and an underdog, and there is no doubt that Danny Stutzman's a fan favorite for this team. The Oklahoma linebacker who was drafted just this past offseason, one of the top linebackers on Dane Brugler over the Athletics board, and one of the top linebackers for guys over at Locked on NFL's draft as well, and Locked on NFL scouting, actually. Everybody was high on this guy. And the Saints end up with him. Saints were the only team to work him out as well. That shows you that every other team kind of knew what he was. And the Saints went out there and drafted him. And you talk about another guy that is a culture guy, that's an energy guy, that's a locker room guy, but also can go out there and make some plays on the field. I call him an underdog, not because I think people don't believe in him, but just because he's, look, you've got Demario Davis and Pete Werner ahead of you, right? You've got guys like Nephi Sewell and DeMarco Jackson that have been around for a few years. Like, you've got some battling to do if you're Danny Stutzman coming into this situation. But I do think that it is worth mentioning that the Saints made effectively one outside, really 2 kind of outside linebacker moves, and outside of one undrafted free agent, Danny Stutzman's kind of the big investment that they made at the position this offseason. And so he's coming in as an underdog, but he certainly has a path that's going to be available to him. So we'll see which way everything goes for him. But Danny Stutzman, I would consider an underdog just based on the situation that's in front of him, but already a fan favorite and a guy that people do want to see get opportunities on the field. He's wearing number 47, taking you back to the Alex Anzalone days. And just great energy, good sideline to sideline, is always kind of hustling, bustling, good communicator, really vocal guy as well, which I think is a lot of value of that, or that's highly valued. I'll say it that way, especially on the defensive side of the football. Really impressive guy. So an underdog, but certainly has an opportunity there. And then one more underdog that I'm really interested in this season, sticking with another young guy, but going over the offensive side, is going to be tight end Dallin Holker. I'm really, really interested in where Dallin Holker potentially fits for this team. He's incredibly athletic, can kind of do a lot of different things. We talked about him as being a potential Taysom Hill-like player, not necessarily utilizing him as a quarterback, of course, but utilizing him out of the backfield, lining him up in the slot and out wide, like utilizing sort of that athleticism that he has. Was a big-time playmaker over at Colorado State. Didn't get a ton of opportunities last season, even when the Saints moved into their evaluation period towards the end of the year. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing how Dallin Holker fits in with this new tight end group, or this expanding tight end group, and this expanding offense, which likes athletic tight ends. So Dallin Holker, absolutely another underdog name to watch. All right, y'all, coming up in tomorrow's episode, we're going to go from underdogs to underrated players, and we're going to take a look at a bit of a deeper look at Rico Payton on the way, a player that has not failed to impress. We got that coming up for you in tomorrow's show. We appreciate you very much for making us a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me and the show. If you see me, please say hi. If you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you're living. Let me know how you're momming them. And trust Who Dat Nation, I'll holla at you.